In relation to business, Trade and Industry Minister Ebrahim Patel has reaffirmed government's commitment to increase electricity supply through more renewable energy. Patel was speaking at the launch of the Energy One-Stop Shop and the unveiling of the Energy Resilience Fund in Pretoria today. The launch is part of the plan announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa to streamline the regulatory processes required for private investment in electricity generation.
The one-stop shop was developed to address key constraints that electricity generators face, such as regulatory requirements that often slow down the approval of projects. It's being rolled out in 4 phases, with phase 1 already completed. At the center of this initiative is to simplify processes with dedicated resources made available to address blockages.
We've now completed phase 1, which is a facility with dedicated personnel, a website, a registration portal for energy projects, and a mapped process showing where a project is in the approval processes. The one-stop shop will also have a team of staff who will work with developers to help unblock or fast-track applications for approvals.
The country's just energy transition is expected to help create investments, improve economic growth and create jobs. And it's believed that the partnership with the private sector will help bring additional skills. But experts say that the energy sources that are provided must be affordable to the majority of South Africans and businesses.
So when we look at what we really need to work on is building national capacity around implementation and improving speed and scale. And I think that the one-stop shop is one of the initiatives that is really helping to clarify this changing policy reform and changing policy landscape. So again, a very positive initiative.
Patel also announced progress with the funding initiative through partnership with the Industrial Development Corporation and the National Empowerment Fund. The 2 entities have set aside financial resources to assist companies with funding. So far, they've approved projects worth about 294 million rand to help boost energy availability.
The companies concerned are in sectors such as food and beverages, metal fabrication, rubber and plastic, as well as accommodation services. The DTIC group is also considering rooftop solar projects. In addition to this, the IDC is a funding partner in a number of large-scale energy production projects, including wind farms and concentrated solar power projects.
Delegates here agree that there's a need to accelerate renewable energy through wind and solar, as this is the cheapest and quickest energy to bring online. They are also optimistic that the one-stop shop will help build national capacity around implementation and improve speed and scale. Naledi Matlapeng, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, so for more on this, we're going to be joined via Zoom by Ahren Posthumus, as the CEO of Momint. A very good afternoon to you, Ahren. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Afternoon, thank you for having me.
I just want to look at the issue of renewable energy at large and really how it is assisting South Africa's electricity crisis at this point, really in relation to the initiative announced, how it's going to foster that.
Yeah, so this initiative, I think, is a critical step towards improving South Africa's energy landscape, and it claims to significantly reduce the bureaucratic delays. Teams are still being set up, and as we've just heard, a number of items are still in processing, so it's still to be seen. What we're really happy about is the fact that we're seeing a 1.3 billion rand energy resilience scheme that will provide blended finance to support companies affected by load shedding, specifically in township and rural enterprises. I think that's an incredibly important point that shouldn't be missed from this proposal and this action. So I think it's a good thing. Load shedding, as we know, has been declared as a state of disaster. I think it's important that an initiative like this should help enable local startups and businesses as part of this national approach to decreasing the load on Eskom.
Thank you for that, because I want to look at the issue of private partnerships coming to the fore, perhaps in assisting the electricity crisis at hand. And really, when we look at the terms and conditions of the Energy Resilience Fund at this point, really, what does that look like for the future? Is going to have to bear the brunt as well of the decisions made at this point.
Yeah, so the DTIC is taking 8 actions to support the energy plan, and these actions include specifically increasing private investment in generation, providing regulatory flexibility and support in the industrialization of energy components. And we've seen this, for example, with the SunCash initiative, which is a tokenized solar investment opportunity that gives investors that tax rebate, the Section 12B, no matter how small their investment is. So that's incredibly positive as well. But I think we as the public also need to watch the space really closely to ensure that there are fair practices. And like I said, the claims are that it will significantly reduce these bureaucratic delays. That's still to be seen. We're very hopeful.
I wonder then, as we shine a spotlight on the relationship between Eskom and renewable energy players, are they on the same page? Are they at loggerheads with each other? And if so, how does this affect the plans that have been put in place, both for short and long term?
Yeah, so I don't think that they're in competition or butting heads at all. I think what Eskom does need to do at this stage, and this opinion is validated and shared by a number of other energy experts, is that Eskom needs to focus on the transmission and storage of electricity specifically, because we're taking such dramatic and great action in terms of renewable energy. We all know renewables are there when the sun is there. If it's wind, it's there when the wind is there. And that brings about the problems, again, of transmission and storage specifically. We're blessed in Cape Town, for example, where we have a huge mountain and canals that run up the mountain. This can be a water battery, essentially, where we can pump water. It's called pump storage. It's incredibly cheap and efficient. And this is what I believe, and many other energy experts believe, Eskom should be focusing on, rather than continually spending public funds on trying to revitalize or fix broken and frankly not really working public infrastructure. The private sector is proving that they're doing this incredibly well. There will come a point in the distant future, I think, though, where the energy production that's coming from the private sector needs to be supported by great transmission and storage. Without that, it's going to be a challenge for the grid to stabilize. There are great initiatives for rooftop solar, which I think is also good, because that'll give sovereignty and individuals the power or the access to power, even if there is a national failure. But again, really, really important that we focus on and make sure that this isn't a benefit that's exclusive to the wealthy and those that can afford to put solar on their own rooftops. We need to make sure that we support initiatives that put solar on top of community centers, gender-based violence centers, schools, body corporates, etc., like we're doing with the SunCash initiative.
Which probably is also in relation to that court order that also took place earlier this year. I wonder, just in conclusion, I want to play devil's advocate here and introduce the Catch-22 situation, because I know the Department of Fisheries and Forestry at this point introduced the minimum emission standards. That was on the back of them signing the Paris Climate Accord. Given South Africa's situation in terms of the energy crisis, why should we still be imposing such stringent measures on the country, given the threats that lie, or rather South Africa face at this point? Should we be more lackadaisical? I want to also balance that argument by obviously also looking at the moral obligations and the long-term effects for the future of the country.
It's a brilliant, brilliant question, and definitely one that we need to be asking ourselves and interrogating intensely. I think the Paris Agreement, it can be an incredibly controversial sort of topic, because there is a school of thought to say that it is absolutely unfair for the developed world to impose these mandates on South Africa, when we actually just need energy that we can generate from anywhere. We still need to build up much more industry. We need to expand our economy and our GDP, and I certainly agree with much of that. However, as you pointed out, we could go and start fracking the Karoo, for example, and doing these unsustainable actions. And maybe in the short term, it'll solve that gap for us or give us a little bit of growth. But really in the long term, if we're not looking to renewables, then we're just kicking the can down the road in terms of the issues that we're going to face in the future. So I think it's incredibly positive that we've got such strong tax incentives and that we're taking such strong action in the direction of renewable energy. The other thing that I do want to point out is that there'll be a lot of energy experts who are massive proponents of other sources of energy like gas, oil, etc. And maybe that's because they have a vested interest or the capability to fund something like that. Solar is something that people, big or small, can get involved in. If you're a single household with a rooftop, in your middle to upper class, it's something that's within a realm of affordability. Through initiatives like tokenized solar or solar funds like the Suncash initiative, absolutely anyone can invest in solar for as little as 85 Rand. We don't see that same type of capability for the massive capital intensive projects that come with nuclear or coal generation and the other sources of power. And tag on top of that we will then have problems down the road in terms of the environmental factors and the environmental harm that those types of energy generation do generate. So I think it's really great that we're focusing on renewable energies. I think it's the way to go.
Ahren, thank you for your time with us on the SABC. Ahren Posthumus is the CEO of Momint, really unpacking the meaning of the Energy Resilience Fund that had been announced by the Department of Trade and Industry a little earlier on today. This is in relation to government's commitment to increasing electricity supply through renewable energy. So we're just unpacking the implications thereof and really what it means for solving South Africa's electricity crisis at large.